Now welcome Derek Eadon.
Thank you very much for having me today. My name is Derek Eadon. I'm running for chair, and I'm running for chair because I think this is a defining moment for Democrats, not only nationally, but especially here in Iowa. I think one of the silver linings that come out of the disastrous election results that we had is that we finally, as a party, get to have a conversation about some tough issues. What are our tactics moving forward? What is that message? Obviously, what we have been doing hasn't been working. The executive and legislative branches have been turned bright red, and we have leads in Democratic state legislatures across the country, and we've lost over 1,000. It's because of our lack of ability to message, and our lack of organization. And we are electing a chair at a time that's very unique for Iowa. We can't wait for the DNC or any of these other organizations to tell us what to do. We need to come up with an aggressive plan, a message that holds the GOP accountable, and build our organization very quickly. And not only before the election have I been having conversations with activists, but since I've been chair, I've been traveling the state talking to activists, elected officials, SEC members, and 3 themes come forward that I think we need to prioritize. First, we need a strong economic message. Democrats have forgotten how to communicate our values. We are the party that stands up for those that don't have a voice in the process or feel like they've been left out. We fight for those folks. We fight for an equal economic opportunity. We know that voters are going to agree with us on these issues. Yet our leaders, and especially in Washington, D.C., we've been using cookie-cutter press releases, negative ads that don't move the ball. And we've been getting caught up in jargon and terms that voters don't understand. And I think as a state, we can set up a message. There are states like Nevada and New Hampshire that have stood up to this Republican wave in 2010, 14, and 16. It's because we need to define our opponents early. We need to define the Reynolds, Branstad administration, Republicans early. We need to highlight many things that they are doing wrong, that they're taking money away from Iowans to give money to their corporate buddies. And we also need to make sure that we are aggressively using grassroots. The idea of just sending out a press release and having a hearing is not going to get the message out there. We need to bring our communications into the 21st age. We have elected officials that aren't even on Twitter. How can you do a rapid response if we're not embracing the new technologies and making sure that when Republicans overreach, like we know they will, that we're holding them accountable? We also need to embrace a culture of organizing. We are too reliant on out-of-state campaigns to come in the last few months with a one-size-fits-all approach. When I started as an organizer in Cedar Rapids, the role between state party staff and county parties is much different. It's never perfect, there's always tension, but I think communication and respect will get us a long way. County parties need to be invested in. Not only do we need to change our communication structure to make sure it's bottom up and top down, but we need to make sure that it's lateral, that we're sharing best practices with activists and county parties across the state. We need to make sure that we have sustained efforts in 2017 and 2018. Whoever is going to be our gubernatorial candidate in 2018 cannot afford to just start from scratch a few months out from the election. What I'm proposing is that we invest in county parties. We ask them to put together a plan that makes sure that they put together tangible metrics on what they think we need to do in their county in 2017 and 2018. We hold them accountable to these results. We help them write plans. We share best practices. We give them ideas and the tools that they need. And then we help fund those efforts. And these aren't just ideas. This is something I've done here in Iowa before. I've been a part of 3 winning presidential campaigns and 1 winning gubernatorial campaign. In 2009, when I started organizing for America here in Iowa, we had staff across the state, in urban areas and rural areas, that were tasked with training volunteer leaders, investing in community organizers to empower them to organize on issues like healthcare. Some of those folks are in this room. Some of those folks have gone on to run for office. In 2010, when I was the coordinating campaign director, Iowa was one of 2 states to keep all of our Democratic members of Congress. Because of the solid early vote plan, we were able to make sure that we kept all of these seats blue. In 2012, when Barack Obama picked me to run his Iowa organization, not only were we one of the only states to increase turnout from 2008, but we invested in 2009 in an office and a staff room in Woodbury County. That's something I'm very proud of, that we spent 3 years cultivating leaders in that area, keeping staff there, having continuity, getting feedback and traveling up there. And we were able to turn Woodbury blue. And I saw too many counties on that map that Barack Obama won, that Donald Trump won. And I've transferred the success to issues. Over the last few years, I've worked on some of the most important issues in the progressive community. We've worked on anti-smoking and anti-fraud issues. I've been hired by the White House working groups on climate change and justice reform. I've worked on gun control, equal pay, a variety of issues where you're able to take this model of raising money for an issue, building up a grassroots organization from scratch, and being able to hold Republicans accountable on this. We need a long-term plan and somebody that is able to execute that plan. And I think we also need somebody that's solely focused on this position, full-time, who has seen success in one of these types of roles. And finally, I think we need to make sure that we are investing in new candidates and new people in this party. As a college student who is protesting the war in Iowa City, I know what it's like to be a new person that is entering the Democratic Party. And right now, there are rifts in our party. There's no denying it. Emotions are high, but I think it can be a good thing. Not only does it force us to have tough conversations, but I think we're going to move ahead with a plan, with ideas on what we need to communicate, as long as we do that together. This would not be my first time working with a divided board or dealing after a contested primary. And no matter what situation you're working in, when you need to have unity, respect is important. Listening to folks is important. And taking the effort to show up and listen and communicate. All of us, no matter when we joined the party, made that decision to become more committed. For me, it was after anti-war efforts and same-sex marriage when I was here in Iowa. Too many of my friends were getting left behind. For many of you, it could have been a specific candidate. It could have been a specific issue. But we all have that in common. All of us have a place in this organization. Just because you're new doesn't mean that your ideas aren't something that we should utilize. Just because you may have been around a while doesn't mean that you can't bring something to this fight. Where I learned how to get out the vote was in Blaine County, from folks like Peggy Whitworth and Norm Sturzenbach, where you were able to work side by side as young staff with those folks. In my experience, it's about bringing people together and empowering them on what they need to do. And I would create a candidate development network that would work on development of not only volunteer leaders, but candidates on skills, provide them template plans, budgets, best practices, and it would create a mentorship program. So activists and candidates that have done this before can reach out to folks. Because we know it's intimidating when you walk in the doors of a Democratic Party event or to put your name on the ballot. The first Democratic Party event I walked into, I left about a half hour late because it was intimidating. And we need to make sure that we're doing that. And I've shared victories with you all in 2006, 2008, 2012. I'm probably just as frustrated as you all are over the results we've seen in the last 2 cycles. And the IDP has been the outlet for my passion. A lot of the staff and the volunteers I've worked with, I consider family. And I want to ask you to all work with me on making sure that 2017, 2018 are the year that we bridge that divide, we work together, and we get back to winning in Iowa. Because I think I'm the candidate that has the track record of success, and also a candidate that can bring some innovative new ideas to the table. So I know we'll be opening up to questions right now. There's also information over here on these tables for myself and other candidates with my contact information. I'll stick around after the event, and I look forward to reaching out to every one of you and earning your support. And thank you. And I'll take questions.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, this is a question submitted by someone in the 3rd District. How do you, as chair, propose to ensure that white middle-class suburbanites and their millennial offspring are not treated like the default setting of the IDP? How do you propose building relationships with underrepresented groups such as immigrant voters, voters of color, and voters with disabilities?
This is something I feel very passionate about. In my organizing career, I've been able to work in urban areas, I've been able to work in rural areas, and a lot of work on campuses. And you'd be surprised that now, while some of the same tactics might differ from community to community, the effort has to be on there in the front end. I think too often we've treated constituency groups as a box to check a few months before the election. There's no continuous communication. What I would suggest is having organizing staff that are on the ground early, and myself as chair, traveling the state, utilizing our constituency caucuses, our district caucuses, to reach out to these communities on the front end and establish a dialogue. There's a lot of education we can do on issues, and some of these communities will be facing issues. We know these Republicans are going to overreach on issues, and we need to show these communities not only that we're fighting for them, but ask them to help. And I would also make sure that we share best practices. On college campuses, there's tactics that will work. I come from an immigrant family, so I know when you're dealing with immigrant communities, that sometimes asking somebody to attend a meeting might not work, but going to a church function might be the best way to reach out. One of my best precinct captains was the wife of the person who ran the co-op in a certain area, and there's a lot of different tactics, but if you actually show up, which I think is a big part of what this chair has to do and travel and listen to these folks on the front end, then when you get to the point of action, it's going to be an easier step. Because I think too many of these groups just haven't been listened to, and that's where we need to start.
I have another submitted question. You've presented a lot of great ideas, but how do we pay for it? Can you give us a better sense of your approach to fundraising?
Yes, I think there's a few places where I've had success with fundraising. I think first, there are specific donors and groups that have viewed Iowa as off limits for the last few cycles. We've had candidates that have been at the party position that might be running for office, or we've had legislative leaders that may not be willing to embrace issues like climate change or gun control. And I think as we're putting together this program in 2017 and 2018, we are going to be playing offense against Republicans. And I think going to donors to ask them to fund specific parts of the program, whether it's field staffers, whether it's holding Republicans accountable, whether it's training for folks, I've had a lot of success with in the progressive community. For over a year, I've worked with a Washington, D.C. firm to raise funds for these organizations. So there are donors out there. Iowa will still be a battleground state as long as we take the next 2 years to do this carefully. And not only that, but we need to expand who's asking for money, and we need to expand our grassroots. We need to make sure that we're reaching out to small donors, putting effort into building that email list, and holding smaller, more informal events, and not just expecting people to pay $100 a ticket there. I think our current chair has done a great job with fundraising, but I hope we can build on that even more, because we're going to have to. The next 2 years are going to be very difficult at the federal and state level, and I think we're going to need all hands on deck to raise money.
Derek, you mentioned that you've worked on justice reform and gun control, raising money from people who want to hold Republicans accountable on these issues. I want to know, what would you do to make sure that our own Democratic elected officials are working positively on these issues instead of us just calling Republicans out on them going the wrong direction?
Absolutely. Something that I've also seen work is we talked about the candidate development network. And we right now don't have a system in Iowa where Democrats are talking about our platform. We have counties that are dealing with immigration, clean water, dealing with school issues. There's a lot of progressive issues that our local municipalities are having to deal with, as well as the state legislature. And actually setting up a communication structure, not only where our grassroots can talk to legislators and learn about these issues, but also sharing best practices. As we are talking to new candidates, I want to educate them on the platform and also find people that have passed progressive policies and show them that these policies can't be done. We shouldn't be shying away from a fight on the issues. We should be starting them. And I think the IDP, the position where we don't have a legislative majority, means that we have to go on the offense to a certain extent. And I think it's a good time to open up that conversation on what are we pushing as a party and where are our values.
I have a question from Alex from Des Moines.
Time.
No time, sorry.